The TRAINSPOTTING 2 review by Marcus Blake. What can I say about TRAINSPOTTIng? It's like the most screwed up high school reunion ever. And I do want to start this review by saying that I was not really that excited about a sequel to such a cult favorite. Because usually when you try to make a sequel to something that's a cult favorite, it turns out bad. Or at the very least, definitely not as good as the original. I think Blues Brothers 2000 is a prime example. So when they announced this, again, I just wasn't really that excited, but I'm happy to have been proven wrong. I'm not saying that Trainspotting 2 is better than the original, because when you have such a cult favorite in the original, nothing's ever going to surpass it because it's on that pedestal. But this is a good, solid sequel to Trainspotting. And the only way that it truly works is the fact that this movie literally is 20 years after making the original and is set 20 years after. So all the actors have aged naturally. You're not trying to fake a timeline. It really is 20 years. And you can definitely see that with how things have changed in Scotland and how things have changed with these characters, especially with technology. But what makes it also great is not much has really changed with the characters. Simon slash Sick Boy is still a delinquent who these days is running a blackmail scam with a with a prostitute slash his girlfriend, and he's running the little pub that doesn't really get much business and can't compete. Renton, he is not an addict anymore. He has grown up, and you do get his full backstory of where he went after he left with all the money at the end of the first film. But the basic plot of this film is Renton coming home, and he hasn't been home in 20 years, and he's visiting his father and paying his respects because his mother is gone. So there's a lot of familiar things that he's coming across, but he also must confront his own demons and face his friends. Spud is still a heroin addict, and there's some very lovely scenes of him, accepting the fact that he's not a very good father, and his girlfriend, whom he, originally met in the first film, and later married, had a kid. It's the same girl that, well, if you remember the first film, he shit in her bed. I don't know if love can really blossom from something like that, but here we are. This is Trainspotting, and I guess anything goes. Probably the most uncomfortable but funniest character is Franco. Everything that you loved in his volatile nature from the first film, especially with not quite understanding everything he's saying because he has that deep Scottish bro, and an accent. We love. But, he's been serving time in prison for his crimes. And, now he also has to deal with the fact that he left a family behind. He's got a son that he doesn't really know. And again, there's only one trade that Franco ever had. But the best part about him really comes down to the revenge he wants on Renton for stealing all of their money. The overall plot really is about it's the homecoming and trying to make sense of their lives 20 years later. After looking back at your life and what it used to be, the best thing to do is to write it down. And of course, that's what Spud starts to do as he is finally getting over heroin and gets talked into writing these stories down among the adventures of his friends and everything that had happened that led them to this point. And probably the one moment in the film that makes everything come full circle is the moment that his ex-wife is reading his manuscript and looks at him and is like, I have a title for this, and alluding to the fact that the title is going to be Trainspotting. as the saying goes, there was a plan, then there's a betrayal. And that's kind of what Trainspotting is all about from the first movie to this second movie. Uh, I love the fact that the characters kind of fell back into what their characters are, that they're still, they're still a mess. While they have changed a lot, they really haven't changed. And the conversations with Renton and Sick Boy are hilarious. So to have them kind of fall back into place is great. There were some uncomfortable moments in the movie, but then again, there were some uncomfortable moments in the first one. That those kind of moments where you're uncomfortable, but you can't look away, but it still added to what made the film great. And the kind of fake musical number as they're ripping off money to pay for their next venture was probably really the best part of the entire film. My minor complaints are really the fact that is while you're bringing everybody back and you're getting to see who they are 20 years later, and as much as I love Kelly MacDonald, and it is a homecoming for her because Trainspotting was her first film and started her career. You just kind of threw her into the mix and tried to force having a cameo that really didn't make sense or have anything to do with what was going on. You could have done a lot more with her character. I would have loved to have seen more between her and Renton and, talking about where their lives are. It's like if you'd had one more scene where, they had a drink catching up and she's calling him out on his bullshit. I think that would have probably added very nicely to Trainspotting too. Her role is she's basically a lawyer now, grown up, and basically they have to contact her to help represent Simon / Sick Boy after he gets busted for drugs. And she does kind of call him out on some stuff, but then again, it's all kind of misplaced. And that's where I think those added scenes with her would have been nice. What really made her role great is, again, even though she was younger, basically like 10 years younger than Renton's character in the first film, she was so much wiser and called him out on so many of his issues. And basically blackmailing him to have conversations with her, made it great. And I kind of feel like if you'd had to alluded that she still had that power over him and explored that, it would have been a nice homecoming for those two characters. But again, I mean, Trainspotting 2, it is a great movie. A lot of fun, not perfect by any means, but they do make it work for, it being a sequel to the original. And again, the strength of that is the fact that it is literally set 20 years after, and this film is made 20 years after. So you don't have to kind of fake what that is. And for anybody that has, dealt with 20-year high school reunions and looking back at their lives and stuff, then that's, you can kind of, you feel for that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Which for me and my co-host Brendan, when we went and saw the movie, and we're actually seniors in high school when the original came out, it is like a screwed up 20-year high school reunion, but very familiar. So I won't give this movie a perfect score. It is a good solid 8 out of 10. It is good. While they do have problems trying to figure out exactly what kind of movie they are, it really is more about the homecoming than anything else. And realizing that you do have to face your issues. You can't quite get over them. And even with all the betrayals and all that, you realize what your true friendships are. So, Trainspotting 2, if you love the original, you should definitely see this. It's a good solid 8 out of 10. And another added thing that makes this a good movie is a great soundtrack. So, go see TRAINSPOTTING too.